Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve. Today I'm hanging out with Chris Haskins from Nord Games. How are you doing
Doing all right. Just going to silence my phone. Inevitably, when we get into one of these, my phone
today?
starts ringing.
Yes.
It's like my extended warranty needs to be renewed or whatever. It's just
Oh,
constant.
of course, of course. That's Stream 101 though. Silence
Yeah.
all the things.
Yeah. Turn off all notifications. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me today. I'm super excited to jump on with you, and I know that we get a chance to talk periodically, but rarely do we get a chance to jump on and be somewhat public for everybody to see our conversations.
Well, I mean, it is always a pleasure to have you on and talk with you. So, for people that might not be familiar with who you are and what you do, you want to give them the elevator pitch.
Sure. I am Chris Haskins. I own and operate Nord Games. Nord Games is a publisher of tabletop accessories, role playing game accessories. We're working on a few board games, card games, things like that. Basically, anything tabletop related, we've got our hand in there somewhere. And right now, we're running a Kickstarter campaign for a new product, what we call the Oracle Story Generator. I'm sure there's going to be links and stuff in the description. People can check it out. Essentially, this product is designed to help you when it comes to creative writing. And if you are looking for inspiration, essentially this gives you the people and actions those people are doing, or in some case monsters, who they're doing it to, what their intent is, and what the development is, sort of as a result of their actions. So, with those five different concepts, you're able to create very interesting and dynamic stories. In total, the each deck, if you're checking out the project page, each deck is themed differently. And so you have things like epic adventures, political intrigue, relics and artifacts, simple side quests, and contracts and bounties. Each one of these has a different theme to sort of define it, but they all have the same basic structure. You have an actor, an action, a subject, an intent, and a development. With those five different card types and the fact that each card type has multiple options on it, you have about 250 million combinations you can create with those decks. So that combined with your own creativity, I think we can safely say you're never going to end up with the same combination twice. So very excited about this project, and we've actually been doing live streams every week and creating them on the fly for the audience, which has been a lot of fun.
Now, you're absolutely correct. As always, the links are in the description for folks to check out. Um, what was kind of like the inspiration for this project?
So I was looking for something that would help me to break outside of my typical box that I usually create. I find myself creating the same adventure over and over again sometimes, and I was looking for something that on the fly I could be discovering the details of the adventure just like the player characters were. So that's really where it started. There was a simple concept early on, almost like a Mad Lib, where we wanted to know sort of a who, what, where, why, how, answer all these different questions. And after some development with the team, we came up with the current structure that it is in right now, which, like I said, each deck consists of five different card types, and there's 12 of each card in a deck, so you have a 60 card deck. And those card types eventually got renamed to the actor, the action, subject, intent, and development is an extra fun thing. You don't have to use it, but it's extra fun because it throws in twists. It could be like, as a result of their actions, this happens. Maybe someone's planning to overthrow them on their climb to the top. Maybe the monster that committed the act has now fled to its lair. That kind of stuff would be in the developments.
Now, when you originally like developed this and came up with this idea, I'm guessing it was for D&D, for tabletop RPGs. That's a lot of what your company does. Were you thinking beyond that, just for maybe people that want to tell stories and authors?
For sure. So anybody who is a creative writer and is writing in a fantasy theme for their own enjoyment, or if they're actually publishing content and stuff, this is a great tool. What it does is it gives you a fully fleshed out story focusing on the people or creatures that are committing the actions, and also the people or creatures that those actions are being committed on. And I think that focusing on that and the impact that it has on the actual people in question in the story is a good way to go, because you have some connection there.
So, all told, 300 cards. It's a decent amount. I'm curious as to when it's all said and done, what the cutting room floors are going to look like.
Do you mean like the physical cutting room floor, or the stuff that we
The stuff that didn't make it into the decks?
A lot,
Yeah.
but have no fear. We're already working on a second and possibly a third story generator, and we already have outlined 2 character generators. So that's going to be very exciting. I think that it's sort of a natural follow-up to this one to create a character generator. Now, the character generator could be used for actual playable characters, NPCs, villains, heroes, whatever you want in your story, because it uses and we borrowed from 5th edition D&D in this. We've used the traits and bonds and flaws and ideals and that kind of thing to give a bunch of different options. And again, like the story generator, each deck will be themed. So if we've got decks that are themed around, peasants, everything in that deck will relate to what we assume in a fantasy world would be a peasant's lifestyle and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, looking forward to that a lot, because one of the hardest things we know when it comes to storytelling is creating interesting characters. Why am I engaged with this story? I don't have any connection to this character. Well, the more you know about the character, the more interesting they become, and the more dynamic they can be, or in the case of combining different concepts together, the more different they can be, I think the better.
So I know you're super busy over there at Nord making stuff. You guys are pretty prolific. Are you finding time to game?
Okay, so I had a chance to run a game on Friday for the first time since the end of our Dangerous Destinations Kickstarter, where we streamed a game for everybody. It was a little rusty, obviously. Normally in normal times, as you know, I am running games at conventions probably like once or twice a day, every day of the convention. And we go to a lot of conventions. So I usually have a lot of practice, and I run them in real life. So I'm there. And even though I'm very good at computers, I'm very bad when it comes to pretty much any virtual tabletop that I start to work with, because I have to learn all the new, where are the buttons and how do you do this and how do you do that. Fortunately, everyone who I was running the game for was very understanding, and we were able to get through it without too many incidences. But we did get a game on Friday. This was the play test for my game that I created for the VIPs from Dangerous Destinations. So we sold VIP tickets on there, and we've been developing the stories and stuff based on Dangerous Destinations, using Dangerous Destinations as the builder for the main place you go in our adventures. Miles is doing one, Bear is doing one, and I'm doing one. And that way we've got 3 different options for people. They can read the synopsis of the stories and decide which one that they want to get into. The biggest issue we've had when it comes to those games, and we're happy to announce that we've finally got it figured out, is a scheduling system so that people can actually reserve their seat at the game. And so we found the program that will work for us. So we should be able to start sending those out this week.
Is that going to be something you guys are doing virtually, or is it at conventions?
For right now, it all has to be on virtually. Yeah, unfortunately, we would love to get everyone together, here at our office, but that's just not logistically possible.
Yeah.
We've got VIP backers from all over the world. So, but we figured that what we'll do is we'll provide a bunch of different dates and times that people will be available all on one calendar to take, they can just pick their seat and say, okay, I want Chris's game. That seems most interesting. Now, what date and time, and then I'm going to pick that. And there's 3 seats left available. I'm going to take one of the seats. So that's what we wanted, something as smooth as possible, and we found it. So looking forward to getting that moving.
What is your VTT of choice?
We're going to be using Shard tabletop. So we've got a few products on Shard, and I think it's the simplest and lightest of the VTTs that I've used so far, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. I had the guys on and spoke to them for a bit about Shard. And I don't know. I'll let you know. I'll let you in on a secret though. You don't actually need a VTT to run games online.
you could totally just jump into Discord if you wanted to. That's totally fine. I think that the thing that I really enjoy about Shard is the simplicity of the combat management and all of that. We could literally all just have our characters, in front of us and all that. That'd be totally fine. And I trust people when it comes to roles and that kind of thing. But the combat management and the fact that I can show everybody on one screen with like fog of war and stuff, so they can't see the monster behind the pillar, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's very useful for me. And then I can still see that, everything on this screen. That's been a lot of fun. So there's a lot of perks to it. Additionally, we use Discord to send secret information back and forth. So let's say someone is trying to do something they don't want anybody else to see. Kind of hard for the rest of us not to just ignore the fact that someone's doing something that none of us see, so we just have to not acknowledge it. It's quite easy to be communicating.
Does Shard not have like a whisper feature?
I think it does. I just couldn't figure it out. So we were just Discording back and forth.
Yeah.
I had each one of the players on a separate Discord message, and I was just Discording them.
I feel like they all have some kind of like whisper feature.
Yeah, they should. So anyway, but that's been a fun platform. Like I said, it's pretty light, and that's what I think is one of its strengths. And it's been working out good. The game on Friday was very good. I got a lot of great feedback, and we wanted to get at least one playtest in on each one of the games just to make sure that there were no glaring plot holes, or we could get some feedback like, oh, this part dragged on a little bit. I think that would be better to just handle as a exposition or something like that. So yeah, or if there is going to be a reason to have an overland adventure during the game that's going to take up a half hour or something like that, give us a reason, have it affect the rest of the game in some way. So like throw out some survival checks and exhaustion, that kind of thing may play a role in that portion of the adventure.
Have you checked out? I mean, they've gone to a new edition now, but they had done a 5th edition Middle Earth game a couple years ago.
The One Ring one?
No,
is that what it's called?
I think it's Adventures of Middle Earth. I think it's
Adventures of Middle Earth. I have not. I've seen it in the stores. And I think that it looks super cool. And I believe it's based on 5th edition, but I'm not too knowledgeable. I would absolutely love to be running around in the world of Middle Earth. Definitely one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to fantasy anything. So that'd be a lot of fun. But if part of me also thinks, well, if the limitations of that, I mean, it's got lots of great maps and lore and all that around Middle Earth. I would want to maybe explore like more north of where most of the stories in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings takes place, just to discover something new.
Yeah. Well, I bring it up because they have the whole like part of the game is the journey, is what they call it, and it's basically like this big exploration kind of skill challenge. And generally, like, everything up to dying is kind of like possible during that part of the game.
Mhm.
And like we did reasonably well on that phase when I had played it, and we still ended up with exhaustion, a level of
Mhm.
exhaustion,
Mhm.
going into the dungeon. Uh, so like anyone who wants like those kind of elements in their game, that like you could just kind of rip that right out of there.
Well, you have to think about things like how much resources are we using in the way of rations, and how long will our beasts of burden be able to handle the load, and did we plan properly? Do we have the right gear? Is it going to start raining? Is it going to start snowing? A lot of things will come into play there, and I don't think that's a problem to bring up and establish during a game session, but there is a certain point where it becomes frustrating more than it becomes interesting.
Or monotonous, right? Like, yeah, in the journey phase, there's I don't know, 5 or 6 roles. Let me say, what to say, and like everyone had to cover the different roles. If not, and certain roles, if you didn't have someone that could do them, you're just screwed. Like you,
Mm-hmm.
you were gonna get there, and you're gonna get to the adventure, and you were just gonna be bad off.
Yeah, see, that's one of the problems, is because in a given party, especially if it's a party of people that have created their characters separately from each other,
Yeah,
you may not have all your bases covered, which is fine, because then you have the challenge of figuring out, well, how are we going to make this happen? Or we're all just going to take a level of exhaustion because
because we
it took
suck at
us,
doing this part of the game.
well, because we took too long, during the journey, or ran out of rations, or whatever may have happened.
You're generally, if I recall correctly, generally a terrain and minis guy.
Well, when I play in real life, yes, I love my Dwarven Forge. I love my what is it? The Monster Studio? No, what are they called? Monster Fight or something like that. I'll find it. But the terrain in general, maps, terrain, miniatures. I love Monster Fight Club. That's what it is. Monster Fight Club makes some really cool terrain. So we backed their projects and stuff in the past, and back every single Dwarven Forge that we can. So yeah, miniatures and terrain, definitely where I love to be.
Yeah.
If I'm playing in real life, it's probably going to be miniatures and terrain on the field. If I don't have miniatures and terrain, it means that I just couldn't fit it into my luggage on the flight.
Yeah.
So what I've done in the past, I have this huge Samsonite on wheels and stuff that has to get checked. I load it up with terrain in usually 2 totes, and these totes are about yay big, and I designed the whole adventure around fitting all of the terrain for the adventure in these 2 totes, and whatever doesn't fit I have to trim from the adventure.
Yeah.
um, because then that gets checked. So
Yeah.
I pack, I in and amongst that, I put all of my clothing and everything, pack it all tight, make sure it's nice and secure, and then I hope to God that thing makes it to the convention, because I've never had problems, so far. But if that doesn't arrive, most of my clothing is not going to be with me, and none of my terrain is going to be with me, which would be a real bummer.
No.
But beyond that, I actually have an iPad just sitting in front of me right here. That's where I do everything else, because I used to bring my books, but that's not ideal, especially if I'm bringing an entire 40 pounds of Dwarven Forge and miniatures. So now I run everything from my iPad, and I often bring a little speaker, so I've got ambient noise I can create, and I can control that from the iPad too, which is really cool. And yeah, I try to make it a whole thing, a very unique experience for people, because especially at places like North Texas RPG Con, I'm given a boardroom. So they give me a boardroom. I can set the ambiance and everything. In our adventures a couple of years ago, the first scene was in a thieves guild hideout sort of spot, and so I brought with me LED candles and stuff. I had all these LED candles set about the whole room and everything. So when people entered, I was already in character and stuff, and bringing people in, and they'd sit down wherever they sat down was their character that was already sitting there, in front of them. So it was a fun time. I definitely tried to really immerse my players in the experience as much as possible. So
Oh,
obviously, there is a limit to it, but short of all of us being in costume and in an actual dungeon, which I hope to do someday, that's about the extent of it.
I wonder at what point it becomes more efficient and economical to just ship it.
Just ship it, or yeah, I mean that's definitely a way to go. But I want to have some sort of control over where my stuff is, and I just there's so many nightmares.
You
when it
don't. Once
comes
you
to
hand it
shipping.
over at the airport, like so that your luggage is getting chucked so many times. There's no telling where it's going to go.
Yeah, fortunately, Dwarven Forge, and I'm not sponsored by them at all, but fortunately,
Yeah.
Dwarven Forge is very robust. Had very few issues with any of their stuff. Mostly, I've had on the Cree colony. I don't know what was the problem, but the glue that the magnets were attached with wasn't very good, and so I've had a lot of magnets come out of my Cree colony terrain. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. It happens. You're gonna have to go
I mean,
rattle
I
Nate's cage over at Dwarven Forge.
yeah, I mean, they're aware. There's plenty of people who have let them know about any issues that have
Yeah.
come up. Basically, a little super glue, and you're good to go. I think
You're
the
like,
original
yo,
glue.
whatever you're using on your Mohawk, Nate, you need to use that on these
Yeah,
magnets so
yeah.
they stay.
Well, it's one of those things, during production, a lot of things can happen. Sometimes the wrong glue is used, sometimes the wrong ink is used, whatever. What you have to do is just understand the issue, and moving forward, correct the issue. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. So for what Ted was doing when he was running, he would set up an extra laptop
Mm.
and zoom that camera in, and he would use his terrain and minis.
Oh yes, so we did that one time for the 2020 North Texas convention,
Yeah.
because I wasn't able to actually attend, but I still wanted to run my games. Is I had one computer with the webcam on it with like a 20-foot USB cable, and I walked around the table and I positioned it. It was also sitting on a little tripod, so I positioned it wherever it needed to be, and I made sure that everyone knew what their character model looked like, and they would tell me, I want to go, attack the monster, I want to run away, I want to whatever. And I made the promise at the beginning, I will never put you in a position to where your character is going to die because I'm trying to be, sneaky like that. I will
Yeah.
always clarify with you, if you go here, he will be able to attack you, that kind of thing. So yeah, but
It has
we made
its
it
own
work.
challenges. I'm not gonna
It
lie.
does. It does.
You're like pointing at the screen trying to tell the GM where to put your mini, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't see me pointing at the screen.
What we eventually got into the rhythm of doing was they would indicate how close they wanted to get to any specific thing. I want to get this close to that tree, I want to get this close to that monster, I want to get this close to that shrine, whatever. So that definitely helped.
You need the coordinates like a chessboard set up so you can just call them out.
Yeah, well, at the time I was using, for our overland portion of that adventure, I was using the Monster Fight Club stuff, and that was brilliant. It worked great. And then as soon as we got into the dungeon delve, I was using the Dwarven Forge terrain.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Monster Fight Club. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, they ran a Kickstarter. I think they've run a couple of them, but I got in on their wilderness, where it's all trees and rocks and bushes and that kind of stuff. And there's a big neoprene mat. I think it's double-sided, has like a woodland look to it. And they even have other neoprene mats that are like little ponds and stuff like that you can throw down and, sort of start building up your terrain. I think it worked brilliantly. It was so much fun. And their monster, the rocks and stuff, everything is hollow, so it's nice and light, and they can all stack and stuff, which is cool.
Nice. just not going to hold up like your Dwarvenite.
Well, it's I want to say it's PVC or something. I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
But Dwarvenite is definitely
Well, yeah. Didn't
the
they
most
like used
superior
to let you
product.
like slam their stuff on the floor and stuff at conventions?
Dwarvenite? Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, to show how
You can run it over with
unbreakable.
a car, and it'll form back to what it originally was. So it's pretty serious stuff. It's sort of a combination of different materials to make it rigid, but also kind of rubbery and malleable.
I
So
I like hearing the stories from the different companies that make that kind of stuff and like kind of like the testing they put it through to
mhm,
see like how it holds up to different things.
yeah.
I almost feel like any of them could probably make a YouTube channel with them just like smashing and destroying their stuff, and it'd probably do even better than
Well,
the actual business itself.
the playtesting of whatever you're creating, I think, is super important, and that's part of why we're making sure that we're playtesting these adventures before we run these VIP games, because we
Yeah.
want it to be a good experience. If you don't spend any time playtesting your stuff, then it basically goes out there into the wilderness kind of naked, and you don't want that. You want it to have been tested and confirmed that it functions the way that you say it functions.
Yeah, you also need like to get outside of your kind of like bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have people with different ideas kind of handle it and see what they do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
that's like the real test, right? When like one of the things we would do with our fan games, it's like stuff that we would have coming out in the future. We kind of use those folks as guinea pigs, and we just kind of take notes and see like, well, what happened? Where were the gaps that we need to fill?
one of the best things you can do when it comes to playtesting, especially board games or card games, is you give it to a group of people and you walk away. And if there's a window or something that you can observe from, so they're isolated and they get to figure out, based on the rules that you wrote and the materials you provided them, how to play this game. And if they're successful, you know that you're on the right track. If they're unsuccessful, you need to learn from that. Why didn't they understand the concept? What do I need to put into the rules so that they can easily get up and running in this game and everyone understands the concept as quickly as possible? Then you have a successful rules book.
Yeah, I've got a lot of met quite a few indie tabletop game designers, not RPG, and they and the different things that they do. Like, have you done any like game jams or unpubs?
What we have done is, we back before COVID, there's a group of gamers nearby where they get together periodically, usually on a regular basis, like every couple of weeks. And what we would do is, any new games that we had or prototypes that we were playing with, we would take that to them, and then we would give it to a group to try out, and then we would talk with them after their first game. And if they wanted to play another game, that was pretty good indication that they enjoyed their first one. But we'd always take notes on what did they find confusing, what was the funnest aspect of that game, and just really dive into it and try to figure out how to make the game as good as possible. That includes things like gameplay, that includes things like graphics, that includes things like instructions.
So when it comes to like making and designing things, is there a particular part of the process that you enjoy above the rest?
um Most of the time, my portion of the creative process is, wouldn't it be cool if we had XYZ, fill in the blank, really?
Yeah.
And then I start to think about how you would go about doing that. Should this product be in the form of a book or an app or a card deck? Or should this be its own standalone board game? Lots of different ways that you can present your concept. So that's usually where I'm at. And then I take that to the rest of the group, and we all discuss it and determine, well, if we are going to go and do this thing, this would be the best format to do it in. But then we also have to be thinking in the back of our minds, is this even a product other people will want? That's where Kickstarter really makes it handy to determine, without too much risk to us. I mean, we go in and spend money on writers and R&D and artwork and all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot up front. But as far as like actually production costs, sinking 50, 60, 70, more into production is a huge endeavor. And so if you can prove the concept and prove that people are interested in your product just, in the matter of a few weeks and a little bit of marketing, then that certainly helps you. So my contribution really has to do with the overall concept of the product, and then setting each team member on a task and really fleshing it out more and being more of a group effort to bring it to market. And then at the same time, working on the PR and the marketing and all that stuff to make sure that people are aware of it and they know what the value is in it. I love that aspect too. And then after the fact, the production and all that, usually that's Ralph and myself working with production to get all that moving. But I have I would say a medium to small role to play in every element of the process. And I think that the fact that we've grown from being just essentially Ralph and me 5 years ago to now about a dozen people now, it's so much better because we can all collaborate. I believe we make a better product that way, and each one of us have a lot lighter load to lift in the whole endeavor.
Weirdest meeting conversation.
Say again.
Weirdest meeting conversation.
In our group, things don't really ever get that weird. I think.
Well, let me recontextualize that. Weird in the sense if you weren't out into the real world and been like, oh, we just had this work meeting about X, and everyone would kind of be like, look at you, funny. I mean, because I think that's like most of our meetings anyway, right? Because we're talking about dragons and giants and elves and dwarves.
Well, that's the funny part, is it's not weird because we're all on the same page, and there's, there's never a time when somebody brings up a concept that's too weird for it so far anyway. I mean, yeah. I'll put that challenge out to the group, let's come up with some weirder stuff, I suppose. But I would say, we don't really ever get into anything that I would consider weird, but we have certainly had those Eureka moments. Yeah. And the Eureka moments, I think, are super awesome because this whole time you're pounding your head against the wall, trying to make this work and trying to make this work and trying to make this work. And then somebody says, we'll just turn it this way. And then you're like, it works now, It's so fascinating. And that's just a metaphor for it. But basically someone brings up one tiny concept that completely changes the product for the better. And you're like, why didn't I think of that? Those kind of breakthroughs and Eureka moments, I think, are one of the best aspects of the creative process.
So you had mentioned apps. Is that a direction you guys are looking to go in?
So we were in development of an app that would incorporate all of our various card decks and stuff that you can see up here, where the app itself, you would basically have all the data that's in those cards, and they actually had a little animation that flipped the card over and stuff and randomized it and all that stuff. So we're working on that, and we just got onto other things, and I'm really sad that we haven't been able to pursue that further because I think it would be a very useful tool. But yeah, at this point in time, apps would be a fun thing. But here's the thing: there's a weird logistical problem. And maybe I'm just out of touch, but it seems like if I have a $40 book and a $20 PDF of that book, does it make sense also to have that as a $20 asset within an app? that book itself, or the product, the stat blocks of the monsters in that book or whatever. It doesn't seem like it's very logical to me. It seems like with an app, you're probably expecting to pay like $5-10.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not an expert when it comes to apps, so I don't know if that's something that people would be willing to buy for that amount. Maybe the assets on a tabletop RPG or virtual tabletop RPG site could be comparable to the PDF. That should be fine. But as far as like an app, I always think, well, how are people going to actually use this? I can see an app like Sirenscape. Makes total sense. Pay a premium price because you're adding such an interesting experience. And if an app is done well, it makes sense to do that. With our products, I'm going, if the actual PDF for this product is $20, how can you justify charging that amount for the content in an app? Or should it be like $5 and therefore your PDF is now way overpriced? I don't know. I'm having a difficult time wrapping my head around it recently. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing, is we want to make our products affordable. We want to make our products accessible to people, and we also want them to see the value in them. But there's a strange psychological thing where someone sees a book, let's say for $15, and they go, normally this book would be much more expensive. What's wrong with it? Is it not good quality? Is it not good content? What's wrong with it? And then they see a book out there that's like $65 and they go, ooh, this must be really good. They order it, they get it, and it's garbage. It's made of terrible materials. The content inside is not good. It's not been proofed. It's not been edited. It's just junk. So it can be all over the place. So what we're trying to deliver is something that is reasonably priced, but also top quality content as far as, the actual writing inside, the usefulness of the content, and also the materials that it's made from.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super tough challenge, and also you guys make books and games and cards, not apps. So it's like trying to figure out how to do the thing, bringing people that know how to do it, and then like even if you know how you want it to kind of interface and go, then you have to find the people that make that possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was like completely kind of like the big part of the downfall of 4E, right? Like they had this bigger vision for something that never happened. Like they wanted to do VTTs kind of before that was a thing.
Yeah, I think 4E, they really wanted to turn a role-playing game into a miniatures game, and they wanted to have an awful lot of other technology going into it that I don't think the world was quite ready for it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they were just trying to codify the game. So when they turned it into a virtual platform, right? Like Fantasy Grounds, like the rules supported the functionality of it. But, I guess whatever company they went with, I think either burned them or went belly up. I don't remember. It's been a long time now.
It's amazing to me just how many things have to go right in order for something to actually get to market. There's an awful lot of, there's different companies, different personalities, different egos, all sorts of different stuff that each one of these deals has to factor in. And when we're working with anybody, another company, a new artist, a new writer, whatever, there's a certain amount of risk going. Even a seasoned veteran who we worked with many times, in some cases, there's a certain risk that you could get burned because expectations or someone, and we're all human, right? So someone has a bad day and they say a thing that gets them in trouble, and then the deal is off, and blah blah blah. There's a lot of things that have to go right just for a product to make it to market.
Do you remember the demos from 4E?
No. So I was playing second edition. In fact, do I have my? Ah, I was playing with this guy right here.
Nice.
So as you can see, it's a bit worn. My uncle gave this to me. This is the original TSR.
Did you skip
Um,
third?
I did. Yeah, I have a couple third books here, but those were mostly for inspiration.
Yeah.
Uh, Whenever I was dungeon mastering, I was essentially playing a slightly modified version of second edition that
I think
my
that's all there ever was.
I mean,
Everyone's
we
version
all,
of TUI.
yeah, we all jump in and make it our own. I think that's important. I think that's good. A few house rules here and there, but the whole point was we get together, we have some Cheetos and Mountain Dew, and we get to go into an adventure together. That was the whole idea. So, but yeah, so I was playing second edition until fifth edition came out.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I did not know that. I drug like
yeah,
all of my groups like screaming and kicking into the next edition.
yeah, yeah. It makes me wonder about the future of WotC. Are they going to make a sixth edition, or are they going to continue supporting fifth edition? Uh, who knows? I think that if they do go with a sixth edition, as long as it's backward compatible, then you're fine. Because all of the having to reprint, let's say, all of the books, and everyone has to rebuy them and all that, not great to the fan base. But at the same time, from a business perspective, you want to continue moving forward. You want to continue publishing things that people are going to buy. And I don't agree with it, but if you have sort of planned obsolescence in your
Yeah.
products, then people have to go and buy it again. And I suppose that we are
Are you talking about gaming or America here?
in general,
Yeah.
but we are in general in the gaming world, we are collectors. We like to, I mean, you see my
Yeah, yeah.
behind me. This isn't even half of all this. I've got totes just sitting over there full of miniatures, full of games. I don't have enough shelf space to put them all on. I mean, it would just be so disorganized. But I think that to a certain degree, you're always going to have a fan base that will buy whatever you put out. But it seems like a waste of resources to me. You're now reprinting stuff that let's say they make a sixth edition that is not that different, and it's it may just, in my opinion, it may just be a waste of resources, and it may just cause a bunch of people to get irritated and have to rebuy stuff, or it might just divide the fan base even more. Uh, will a bunch of brand new players go to sixth edition, and that will be their entry point into the hobby? Maybe that's the logic there. If it were me, I would, because fifth edition I think is a very, very good system. I would continue to support fifth edition, and I would continue to put out products and grow the fan base based on the fifth edition rule set.
Pathfinder all over again.
Well, look at what happened with second edition
Yeah.
Pathfinder. I have the second edition Pathfinder book somewhere. Oh, down there. I got it because I thought it would be a cool reference. I've played Pathfinder a few times, not so. Like I said, coming from second edition, it got really crunchy, and I was like, "Wow, this is."
Yeah, that's got to be super overwhelming. At least if you went to third, it's almost like easing into it. But Pathfinder's third
super
on
crunchy.
steroids.
And no disrespect for anybody who likes crunchy stuff, but it was just a little bit too much for me. And I was thankful that I was only playing and not having to DM it, but just not my cup of tea. And then I got the second edition to see how they changed, and it seemed like they streamlined and optimized, and a little less crunch, but still fair bit of crunch. And they basically divided their their player base into two different categories, first edition and second edition. So was it necessary? I do see the appeal of kind of having a clean slate. Like, okay, there's that huge amount of content out there for first edition. We're going to start fresh with a second edition, and then we've got all these products we can start to create around the second edition. But you really just divide your fan base more and more and more. So if there's people who are playing first edition, second D&D, first edition, second edition, third edition, which I mean 3.5, I think a lot of people just moved right past 3, so 3.5. Fourth, I know some people who have played fourth. I don't know anybody who still plays fourth. And fifth, you're dividing your player base into 5 different tribes, and some of them, like the first,
you might as well
people,
say 6.
well, there's a lot. And so, and some people, like especially some of the first edition people, are like, oh, I hate every other edition because of this reason or that reason. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's not your cup of tea, but some people can get very excited about it, and like adamant that their edition is the superior edition. And it just really divides us instead of unites us, which I think is a problem. So the fewer editions, in my opinion, the better, but then you don't get the ability to fix a lot of the problems that have been plaguing. So I think if they do a 6th edition, they'll probably get rid of alignment. I know alignment has been something that has been a bone to pick for a lot of people for a long time. So I could definitely see that going away.
They're so close.
I don't mind alignment. But the thing is, to a lot of people, especially new players, they just don't really get it. And I think that 5th edition did a good job of explaining the different alignments and how that generally will influence your decision making and your behavior. And I like that aspect in a role-playing game, but it could be handled differently. Every scenario is different, and you can't really put somebody in a box based on their alignment. And so, and especially when it comes to like evil characters, player characters who are evil often result in a lot of problems within the group. Well, it says in my alignment that I would do this. It's like, yeah, but it's really, you're being a dick right now, like it becomes a problem. So I can see them getting rid of alignment. I could see them potentially adding a bit more crunch in certain cases. But
well, I think for alignment, like you're at the point where you either need to make it a part of the game again or get rid of it. Like it has no real meaning in the game anymore. So why have it? Like that's like, it seems redundant and useless.
I think it's more on the players or the dungeon master to enforce that if there is going to be alignment used. And mostly what I mean by that is someone really steps out of character. They do something that they really wouldn't do based on their history and their alignment and their background and all, everything about them says they're not going to do this thing. So you have to have a good reason for them to decide to do that. Either they're having an existential crisis and it's going to permanently change their character for good or bad. The noble paladin decides to execute somebody because of their rage over whatever they did, but normally they wouldn't have done that. It's like Batman killing somebody. You would think that Batman could keep it together, but there was that one time that and so anyway, that can be a point that defines that character and their decline into something bad. Or in an opposite way, the selfish rogue character saves somebody that they didn't necessarily have to, put themselves at great risk, and starts them on the path to redemption or a different lifestyle. So I think that in that way, I use alignment to get a general bearing on somebody and what they usually would do. And if they step too far outside of that box, there's got to be a good reason for it. And in that case, and I don't mean to say they're not allowed to do it. I simply say, oh, you can do it, but there's going to be something, you know,
Yeah.
there's a reason why your character would have done this, and it's because you're falling in love with this other character, or you are playing the long game and you're trying to, you know, appear to be something you're not, or whatever. You know, there's a lot of different
Well, it used to be a lot of
ways.
different components of the game interacted with alignment, right? Now it's like you can find, I don't know, maybe a couple magic items you can't attune to if you're
Yeah,
not the right alignment.
yeah. So that's another thing. If a magic item is, it can key into your um soul, you know, your personality. Who are you really? And it's restricted based on that. Only a truly evil character can wield this blade, or only a truly good character can wear this crown. Or I like stuff where it's like, if you're a bad guy, this really holy artifact is going to hurt you if you touch it. That kind of stuff, because in your soul, we know, you know, that you're not good. But then we're all the heroes of our own story, right? So a villain doesn't believe that they're a villain most of the time. Uh, I prefer not to get too. I believe that the best characters and the best villains are the ones that truly believe that they are doing the right thing, and they're not just being evil for the sake of evil. I think that Skeletor is evil for the sake of evil, but I think Thanos is truly believes that he's doing the right thing, and I think that's a you know, if I use those two examples against my villains, I'm like, yeah, I want to create more Thanos type characters and less Skeletors.
Yeah, well, one's compelling and one's a character, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
One probably has a point. Uh, not not the greatest execution, but definitely a point. There's only so many resources in the galaxy. There's only, you know, only so much we can consume, and everyone will prosper if we reduce the number of creatures, you know, that exist, after they all get over the fact that all their, you know, that half of their family just got disappeared. But you get my point. Like he
Yeah.
truly believes, and at the very end of Infinity War, he breathes a sigh of relief as he's in his garden, like, I did it. You know, so much satisfaction that he has. And like, he truly believes that he's the hero. And I mean, call him a psycho if you want, but he was committed.
He's not my kind of villain. He only did things in half measures.
Oh yeah.
also, eventually you're going to get back to that point where you were at anyway.
How do you mean? In the case of Thanos, yeah.
Yeah. You reduce everything by half, but eventually the numbers will work themselves out and get back to
well, but for a certain amount of time, you're going to have good. It's going to be nice. It's like, why do you even garden? You know, well, it's just going to get overgrown eventually. Well, for a certain amount of time, it's going to look really nice. So,
what would you, if you were to like change or tweak the alignment system, what would you do with it?
I think I would try to base it a bit more on your personality. If there could be some defining characteristics about your personality that maybe in keywords or core concepts would help. Because I think that alignment is a very simple, straightforward way of putting people into boxes. You know, you're neutral evil, you're neutral, you're a chaotic good. And that helps to define what you usually do in a given situation. So I think it does a good job at what it's trying to do, but it's a role-playing game. We can't
Yeah.
account for every single possible combination of events. So maybe relying more heavily on the personality and incorporating alignment without calling it alignment into there. I don't know. I generally think of myself as a certain type of person in real life, but I've been presented with situations where I've acted in a way that was abnormal for me. So it really does come down to the situation.
Yeah, I feel like the alignment system tries to be presented through a very black and white, right? Kind
Mm-hmm.
of kind of
it's
point of
it's
view.
it's trying to put you in a box.
And the world
So
the world's just not that way, right? I've
yeah,
always looked at alignments as kind of like a gradient or like a dimmer switch, right? That
yeah.
like yeah, I mean even if you're lawful good, you're not lawful good all the time.
Yeah.
Or there's instances where that could definitely change.
Well, what was it in Pirates of the Caribbean? It's not so much rules; it is guidelines.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the difference between rules and guidelines is essentially guidelines are flexible and either, like you say, more of a gradient. It's not a hard and fast rule. So maybe it's not so much they need to remove alignments as they need to help people to implement them better. Because I do believe they have a a good function and a good purpose, but execution is sometimes lacking.
Would you go as far as to like bring back like some of the old like the mechanics that go with it, or create new mechanics that go with alignment?
Well, like I said, I think that maybe you relate it closer to the personality. You
Yeah.
incorporate it somehow into personality, and maybe even there's a role associated with it. A morality check or something. I don't know. Something that you're allowed to do to find your moral compass. I don't know. Like I said, I don't mind it.
They,
I was taught, when I first started playing about alignment, and I thought, brilliant. That helps me to make decisions based on what my character would normally do. I don't mind it at all, but I find that a lot of people, it seems to be a big topic of conversation, especially right now. Uh, and if they want to remove it. Just help us to um, play our characters as good as possible with some aspect or another. Don't just remove it and leave us hanging. Instead, try to give us a more clear understanding of what our characters would do with some other aspect of the character creation process.
I mean, because like in previous editions, right, you could detect good and evil, you could know alignment, and so it mattered in the game. But also, I've also seen that create problems in the game as well, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the we had a player that was playing a paladin, and like we had just like cleared out an orc den or whatever, and just the women and children were left. And they tried to run by them, and it was third edition, and there was this feat called combat reflexes. Basically, let you take a lot of attacks of opportunity, and he just like mowed down, the women and children, and we're all like, "Dude, what did you just do?" Um, and this has gone back like I don't know at this point, like 20 years. So even back then, we were a little horrified. So, and he was just like,
Yeah,
"I'm a
yeah,
paladin. They're evil. Now they're dead."
yeah.
So,
Well, and one of the things I encourage my players, whether it's a one shot, I mean, if it's one shot, it really doesn't matter as far as experience is concerned and stuff, but especially on a long campaign, there's no reason to go around hacking and slashing everything you see. If you are given a task to go slay a monster, yeah, slaying the monster may be the only option. It's a monstrosity. It's going to kill you and everything that it gets close to. But there might be alternatives. You may be able to capture it and put it into a different plane of existence, or an area where it won't be able to hurt anybody. With the villain and the villain's underlings, do you really need to slay all of them? Maybe there's more of a charisma based approach, or an intelligence based approach to this, instead of just going in guns blazing, so to speak.
It makes for more compelling stories at the very least.
I think so. If all we ever do is murder hobo our way through the world, is that really that interesting? I think that when you have those epic moments where you're able to talk down the big bad, or turn their henchmen against them, or something more interesting than straight up combat, I think that that's more fun for me anyway.
True enough. So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out after a weighty alignment conversation?
Final thoughts. Well, if you want to weigh in on alignment, no, I'm just kidding. Check out our Kickstarter if you want to have a great tool for story generation. There's gonna be a link in the description below. It has 3 days left at noon today, so it'll be going for 72 more hours after noon today. We're going to be having a countdown party starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday the 8th. We'll be broadcasting on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. If you want to join us there, should be a lot of fun. There is also a Gleam giveaway. I could probably give that to Dave. You can put it in the description of this as well if anyone wants to jump in on that. We're actually going to be one of the grand prize is this. It's hard to see right now, but one of the extra Dungeon Master screens, not this one, this is mine, you can't have it, but one of these from the Alchemy Kickstarter, we have a few extra. So grand prize is going to be the stained version of that. We also have an unstained version for second place, and then we have $100 store credit for third place on the Gleam giveaway. So I'll provide you with a link to that, and you can
win stuff.
Yeah, win stuff. Like this thing's like $300 something. It's really, and it's awesome. So from Dogmite, they make some amazing stuff. So check out the project, share it with your friends. That's always very helpful for us. It's ending 72 hours from now, so make haste. Looking forward to seeing everybody at conventions as we're opening those up more and more and more. And always look forward to seeing everybody tuning into our live streams every Tuesday at 10. So, and once again, thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure to talk with one of the nerds. And we really got into the deep stuff today with the alignment.
It's like there's all the two things that start a fight quicker than anything else is alignment and monopoly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh man.
So on that note, as always, folks, stay nerdy.